We have Ken Arney here to speak. He's the regional forester for District 8. That's the Forest Service district that we are in currently. He got his undergraduate at UT, and he has been with the Forest Service since 2001.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I feel like I'm in a dark hole up here on the stage. And I'm going to, so none of this is being recorded by camera, right?
We have a camera right there going.
Oh, so I need to stand to where you can see.
You can stand anywhere on the stage.
Okay.
I'm sorry about this.
That's not a problem, but it's good to be here and good to see you all. I find myself, I need to be adaptable wherever I am. I'm often speaking, and sometimes it's in the forest and in the woods, but most of the time it's in an environment like this. Oftentimes my presentations are more to groups and are in the 15-minute time range, so not often that I'm given 45 minutes to an hour, so probably going to have a lot of time for questions. But it is an honor to be here, and I really appreciate the time. I appreciate Dr. Pat Layton serving as the host for me to be here today, and just really look forward to talking with you all. I think most of you have seen the title of my presentation, from door-to-door salesman to regional forester, and why relationships are so important to getting things done. And I know that's a little bit different probably than the kind of presentation that most of you would expect from a regional forester. I'm not here to talk about scientific findings. I'm not here to talk about the work that we do in research, but more give you some examples of the experiences that I've had in my career of about 48 years, working for 3 different natural resource agencies, and some of the things that I've learned about the importance of relationships and those soft skills that are really important, I think, to have long-term success in the work that we do. A little bit on my background. I grew up on a farm, actually in Tennessee, that my brother and I still own and still is actively managed. And I was an entrepreneur early in life, you know, whether it was plowing small gardens or doing work, general type work on the farm or adjacent farms. I went to the forestry school at the University of Tennessee. The school that's, our orange is a little bit different than your orange, and your orange is doing a lot better in football right now than our orange is. And I think Robbie would agree with that. But not long ago, I was sitting in a classroom just like you are. And while preparing for today, I got to thinking about college and just the kind of things that I thought about at the time that I was in school. Generally, I was with a group of folks like you. Most of us like to be outside, like to hunt, fish, hike, other things in outdoors, and really was anxious to get started to work in a profession, and wanted to get out and get things done, to get on with their career, and to really be a part of something larger. And I feel like that, can any of you identify with that? Is that the way you feel? I'm not surprised. I certainly felt that way. And so I expected that some of you would be in the same place as me. Most of us here as foresters or wildlife managers or professionals, we work on long-term type things, and oftentimes the work that we do really takes decades or even centuries to unfold. And so we often tends to be biased toward action. And the phrase biased toward action has been popularized, I think, in recent years. And I looked at Amazon's 14 principles of leadership. And you probably heard or read them, but you can easily look them up online. And I'm not going to discuss all 14 of those, but just mention a few. Number 1 is customer obsession. Leaders start with the customer and work backwards. And this one you probably heard. Number 10, frugality. We certainly hear that in government now. Accomplish more with less. Number 8 is the one I really want to discuss, and this is how Amazon chose to define it. Bias for action. Speed matters in business. Many decisions and actions are reversible and do not need extensive study. We value calculated risk-taking, end of quotes. Sounds good, right? And most of the time it is, I think. But a healthy bias for action, I think, is the opposite of analysis paralysis. And analysis paralysis is overthinking or analyzing something. You may have fallen victim to that even if you're doing a research paper or something like that. It's awfully easy, I think, to overanalyze. I was in a meeting with Forest Service folks a few years ago, and we were frustrated. We had met several times on this subject and was talking about how we're ready to get something done. And someone said, I feel like I just need to go kill something. They was a hunter, and I don't mean that the wrong way. Many of you are hunters, I'm sure. But sometimes we feel like that. We just want to get something done. And for all I know, you may feel like that today, but a bias for action, I think, too, can have a dark side. It can make you impatient, taken too far. It can even take you to a place, I think, of doing something even if it's wrong. Entrepreneurs sometimes say ready, fire, aim is the preferred business approach. And there's even a best-selling book on that. But don't expect too much time. Rely on yourself or aim and get out there and make $100 million was the quote from this book. And maybe it works some to get in and get out for a commercial endeavor, but I think a lot of the work that we do is not that way. And a bias for action, I think, can oftentimes fail if we're in isolation and sometimes itching to do something, but not taking time to build support, I think, can be fatal. And I've also seen a bias for action work, but I think the key is where we've got good collaboration, and that's really what I want to emphasize. If you do collaboration, you can double check your assumptions, and you can also benefit from others' lessons learned. And I think it's important to involve others and collaborate as we do work. For the last several days, I've been doing performance reviews with about 20 individuals that report directly to me. And I ask for candid feedback in those performance reviews. And I really want that candid feedback because I think that helps me be better, and it also gives the opportunity for someone that I may be giving feedback to feel comfortable in giving me candid feedback. But when I was in school, we didn't talk much about collaboration or the collaboration process or focusing on listening skills. So I think some of us were naturally good at that, and we had interactions maybe in some of our experiences, maybe with 4-H or Scouts, or maybe even in school in a sorority or fraternity. And that's why I wanted to talk about this today, because I doubt that you've spent much time thinking about these important skills that I think are really going to make a difference in your career down the road. So I want to impress upon you the importance of slowing down, the bias for action, slowing down to listen, to bring others along with you and to build relationships. Because I've learned one solid truth during my career, and that success that I've had has really been built on those positive, successful relationships, trusting relationships. And any achievements that I've made has really been with others that's been a part of that. So I want to tell a few stories to illustrate my point. And it's about my career in forestry and conservation. And these have been pretty successful stories. And but they would have not had the success, I don't think, without the partnerships. And the first story is about me and the title of the presentation. Does anybody know what a dictionary is now? Good. I didn't know with computers and internet anymore and auto spell check, it's not as necessary as it used to be. But I told you about my farming work, but my first job out of high school, the first summer I spent was selling dictionaries door to door. And I tell you, it's the toughest job I've had in my career. To get up each morning knowing that you're going to be knocking on doors of people you don't know to try to sell something. And at that point in time, dictionaries were important. Computers had not come along. And it was hard work, knocking on doors. But one thing I learned early on was the importance of relationships. If I could sell a dictionary to a school teacher or a school principal, and they would permit me to use their name, did it help me sell other dictionaries? And so it was just something that I learned early, that the importance of relationships and and how it literally opened doors for me in that example. And you know, books will teach you a lot about networking, and I think in some ways it's received a bad rap because it's not just about glad handing and very quickly meeting someone and moving on, but it's about building those trusted relationships that over time be authentic and genuine and generally around shared interests. It's much more positive and altruistic. The relationship has no strings attached. Partnerships or relationships are really two entities or more that really understand each other. Collectively, you have the knowledge and the skills and the resources that can pool together to help each other when needed. It may help you reconnect with someone. You may help reconnect someone with someone else. Or you reach out just to check in to see if that person you have a relationship needs anything. They can be mutually beneficial, healthy, and powerful. Another example I want to talk about is I worked with the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency early in my career. It was the first professional job after college. And I graduated, and I think I told some of you this afternoon, with a degree in forestry. My first job, though, with the Wildlife Agency was a wildlife enforcement officer, basically a county game warden. But I had a degree in forestry with a minor in wildlife management, and I really wanted to be a forester. So I was fortunate to be in the right place at the right time, and the forestry position became vacant. I interviewed and was selected. Suddenly I had the responsibility of managing 200,000 acres of land that the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency owned. And quite honestly, I was put into a job that I really was not ready for. I did not have the knowledge, I did not have the experience, but I think by all accounts, I think I was successful in that. And I think the reason I succeeded was that the agency leadership gave me the latitude to partner, to travel, to build relationships, and to learn and seek advice from others. I had some mentors along the way that were really valuable in that. And they didn't ask anything in return, but helped me be successful. And I reached out to other agencies like the Tennessee Valley Authority and even the U.S. Forest Service that I knew very little about at that time, but the Forest Service was very helpful. And I ended up partnering with the Tennessee Valley Authority and actually Harvard University School of Landscape Architecture. And we did some really rudimentary modeling of wildlife habitat suitability, and this was back in the early 80s. And wildlife management, forest management at that time was very controversial on public land. And I ended up putting a presentation together from that work that was presented to some committees in the Tennessee legislature that really received very positive feedback. Then the chief of the Forest Service at the time was Max Peterson. He was visiting the Cherokee National Forest in East Tennessee. Cherokee National Forest knew about the work I'd done. They invited me to come and make that presentation to the chief of the Forest Service and a team that he was traveling with. The chief liked that presentation, invited me, and I'd only been working about 10 years at the time, to Washington to present this presentation to the national leadership team of the Forest Service. This was a huge experience for me at the time. And it's interesting now, I made that presentation 10 years into my career. Now I report to the chief of the Forest Service. So all of that would not have happened had I not been humble and reached out and asked for help at that first forest management job with the Wildlife Agency in Tennessee. So I think some key things about that story is I acknowledged that I was in over my head. I was very humble. I asked for help and built some solid partnerships. And I think in the end it was a success. I ended up after that getting some promotions in the Wildlife Agency, left the agency as chief of the Real Estate and Forestry Division, and then was selected by the governor in Tennessee to be the head of the Forestry Division in the state of Tennessee. But I think all of that happened because I built those relationships, and many of those endure today. When I went to the Forest Service, right before I went to the Forest Service, because of the controversy of timber harvest in the state, I really encouraged the expansion of the Forest Inventory Analysis Program when I was state forester, because we needed that to tell the story about forest conservation. And with that Forest Inventory Analysis Program, later we did, as a result of really good information, we developed the Southern Forest Resource Assessment. That came out in 2001, just about the time I transitioned from the state to the U.S. Forest Service. And that assessment was really grounded in science and shifted really the focus from the concern about timber harvest to a concern about forestry in general. It was really a game changer for the middle-of-the-road conservation organizations that viewed timber harvest as the problem, but the real issue was changing land use and the loss of forest land and all the benefits that forest land provides to the citizens of the Southeast. And so it was a game changer and really converted a lot of the middle-of-the-road conservation-minded individuals to work on the bigger problem, and that is the one of retaining forest and the value of forest. About the same time, to give a good example of large landscape initiatives, a few professors at Auburn University started work on longleaf pine, an ecosystem that at one time encompassed about 94 million acres in 9 states from Virginia around East Texas. That ecosystem had gotten down to 3.4 million acres. We developed a range-wide conservation plan that was released in 2009, and the goal of that plan is to move from 3.4 to 8 million acres by 2025. Since the plan was released, we've increased the acreage by about 1 million acres. In March of 2020, we're celebrating the 10-year anniversary of that longleaf pine initiative in Washington, D.C. And many entities, including the Nature Conservancy, have called that initiative the most effective and successful landscape initiatives globally. That was built by a group of folks coming together, working on common interests, building trust, and starting to noodle on something, not knowing where it was actually going to go. But it's gone in a huge way, in a very positive way. And it's interesting, it's brought players and partners together that you normally wouldn't think would work together, like the Department of Defense. And we're finding that there's a tremendous alignment between national security and the Department of Defense with conservation as they manage military bases. The lands outside the military bases are very important for conservation, and so they've been a key player in this longleaf pine restoration initiative. And we moved from longleaf pine to a number as we think about the lessons learned with longleaf pine and what we can do when we bring the right set of partners together to work on initiatives. A very large initiative that we're working on now relates to keeping forest as forest. And this came out of the follow-up assessment to the Southern Forest Resource Assessment in 2001. We released the Southern Forest Futures work in 2013 or 14, I think it was. And basically that projected the loss of forest land up to about 23 million acres by 2060. And that's an acreage about the size of South Carolina. And so you think about the loss of that much forest land and the adverse impact that could have to water quality, wildlife habitat, all of the benefits of forest, it's huge. And so we've got a large group of entities working on keeping forest as forest, basically under the idea of no net loss. We have about 245 million acres of forest land now. And as forest land is lost, hopefully we can offset it some way. But we have senior executives from Georgia Pacific, a forest products company, senior executive from Coca-Cola, as the basic ingredient in Coke products is water. So they're real engaged in keeping forest as forest. And so that's an initiative that's been going about 4 years, but I think has tremendous promise. Our Secretary of Agriculture, Sonny Perdue, is from Georgia and started an initiative a little over a year ago on shared stewardship. And that's working together with state agencies, sharing leadership and sharing decision making with the states, and we're developing what we call shared stewardship agreements with state agencies. We've got in our 13-state region, we've got 2 signed agreements, working on a 3rd, and I know South Carolina is starting to have some discussions along that line. So I think you can see from these examples of landscape initiatives, keeping forest as forest, and so on, we don't always know where things are going, but we know somehow if we get the right group of players together and really take a leap of faith on the relationships and really sustain and have the ability to endure long, sometimes tedious meetings, then good things can come out of that. And remember, as you think about your career, foresters and wildlife managers don't just spend time in the woods. You will probably early in your career, but these other things that we do to convene groups, bring them together, folks who didn't know one another, we innovate, we research, and some positive things can come from that. And even looking for different markets, like the work that Dr. Pat Layton is doing with CLT, and that's an important product. At the end of the day, forest landowners really have to earn some kind of income from their forest land, or the high probability that it will not stay in that forest land. So I think there's some challenges for you folks as students, and you know, I've shared some success stories. I've had a high degree of luck probably in my career, but I've really worked hard and was oftentimes, I think, in the right place at the right time. But a career is really not filled with success stories, and I probably learned the most from those things that didn't go well. And throughout my career, there's been a good number of those. And but I continue to face each day in a positive way. And you know, I've had to do things in my career. When I was state forester in Tennessee in the mid-1990s, we had budget challenges, and we had to reduce personnel. I had to go meet across the state about 70 folks to tell them they were not going to have a job, that we were closing offices that they worked in. You know, they didn't teach me that in school. And if you care about your fellow human being, that's a hard thing to do. But it's the kind of thing that you're probably going to have to do, difficult things in your career. And so it's a challenge, but you can do it. And so, you know, disputes arise sometimes from decisions that I have to make at the position I'm in, or decisions that Robbie makes as district ranger in South Carolina. But we have to tell our story, be transparent and honest, and do the best that we can. And I'm always willing to talk to groups. We had a group of protesters in Atlanta recently, out on the street in front of our office, and you know, we knew they were coming, so we had law enforcement. We have a law enforcement branch of the Forest Service, so they were there to make sure nothing bad happened. The Atlanta police were there, and you know, I could have stayed in my little office and not talked to those folks, but I chose not to, and invited a small group of them to come in. And I wasn't sure what I was going to say to them, but I felt like it was the right thing to do, to invite them in, to give them an opportunity to talk. And at the end of the discussion, I didn't have to say much at all. They were full of wanting to talk to me, and so I pretty much just listened respectfully, and I think that's the right thing to do. And I think just that offer of opening up and letting those folks talk was beneficial and was the right thing to do. But we do have litigation that happens at times with decisions we make in the Forest Service, and but the more we can do to build relationships and trust and be transparent in what we do, then the likelihood of litigation is less, I think. And so we want to do all that we can to minimize that. But I think there are challenges too in the difficult times, and I think during those difficult times, really our values are what guides us, and I would encourage you to give some thought to this. You need to be anchored in something, and usually it's your core values. Your core values are probably developed early in life, and it's important to recognize and be able to articulate what your values are for your own awareness, as well as to be able to communicate with others how those values guide you. And you might ask, well, why does that matter? Because I think your ability to communicate your core values will build relationships and enhance trust. And I told you I'd come back to relationships. I know I've mentioned it many times in this, but it's valuable as you talk about values, I think. As far as the Forest Service values are talked about, and we talk about that quite a lot now as a result of some of the challenges with the workplace environment that we've experienced in the last few years. And I think it's important to share with you some of the key values that we talk about in the Forest Service. The first is, and there are 5 points to these. The first is service. It's service to each other, service to the American people, and service to the planet. Interdependence of all things, people and nature, communities and colleagues, to the past, the present, and the future. Conservation, protection when necessary, preservation when appropriate, and restoration when needed, and wise management for multiple use and enjoyment always. Diversity of people, cultures, perspective and ideas, experiences, and ecosystems. And the 5th is safety in every way, both physical and psychological, as well as social. Do you remember my earlier question, what guides you when challenges arise? Pay attention to your own, and when you look for a job, I would encourage you to pay attention to the organization's values that you may be going to work for. But when challenges comes, I think your values will really serve to anchor you. So when I give advice about relationships today and the things that I've shared with you, you know, I've learned a lot about relationships in a lot of different ways. I was president of the Rotary Club when I was in Nashville, Tennessee. And, you know, I think I was president of the Rotary Club the same year the governor selected me to be the state forester. And the result of those interactions, I think, really helped me, prepare me to do the interview when I was interviewed for the state forester. So as I'm wrapping up, I've shared with some of you, but we really need folks like you to work for the Forest Service. We need bold thinkers who have a deep passion for the resource and to help us sustain the nation's forest for the present and the future. And if your values align with the Forest Service, I think we may have a spot for you. And the good news is that we're hiring now. We've got 240 positions that we're going to be hiring as a part of the Society of American Foresters meeting coming up in Louisville, Kentucky. You don't have to be present to apply. Those jobs are targeted through the pathway programs for graduates and recent graduates, and 28 of those positions are in the Southeast. And I've got a handout that Robbie will pass out in a minute that's got the information. Some of you may already have those from earlier today. To know that we're doing that, and we have a recruiter, her name is Michaela Hall, and her contact information is in the handout, I think. And she's available to help you build profiles that you've got to do in USA Jobs and to help you in any way. So, you know, if you're a person that's looking for a job, you have a strong work ethic, a drive, and integrity, and your values align with ours, then, you know, I would hope that you would consider looking into the Forest Service as a career. Before I take questions, I have one last thing to share. Do you guys know who Simon Sinek, am I pronouncing that the right way? The TED Talk guy is. Y'all heard of him?
I think it's Senate.
Senate. Okay, Robbie, thanks. Anyway, I saw his TED Talk recently, and he's got a book out on Start With Why. And he explains ideas around leaders inspire cooperation, trust, and change. And he's written a book called Together is Better, a little book of inspiration. And three thoughts in that. The ability of a group of people to do remarkable things hinges on how well those people can pull together as a team. You can't do it alone, so don't pretend you can. Life is beautiful not because of the things we see or the things we do. Life is beautiful because of the people we meet. And to go fast, you go alone. To go far, you go together. And just remember, you can't do anything alone. As I said, relationships really does open doors, and certainly did for me. So that's comments I've got to share, but I'd really be interested in hearing thoughts that you've got or questions that you may have. I'm standing here so I'll stay on the camera, so I really am not moving much. Yes, sir.
So I may be generalizing here a little, but in this day and age, and as time passes, it seems like a bachelor's degree is more and more becoming a little devalued and more bare minimum. And I'm curious how you would qualify the statement, it's not the grades you make, but the hands you shake that gets you where you're going in terms of education or career. Well,
I've got a bachelor's degree, but my degree's 48 years old. But I wouldn't devalue a bachelor's degree at all. Certainly, probably a more advanced degree may open more doors for you. But the hands you shake, I wouldn't put that lightly. It's not just shaking hands. It's building those lasting relationships that are important. And being able to interact with people and build collaborative type initiatives and work together. So I think you can be very successful with a bachelor's degree. We hire many people in the Forest Service with bachelor's degree, but a master's probably will open a few more doors. Yep. Is it pizza and beer time?
Ken, Forest Service has been in existence over 100 years now, and so in your view, from where you sit, what's the biggest challenge to natural resource conservation in the future, maybe over the next 100 years? What's that challenge, just from where you sit, the biggest challenge?
Oh gosh, Robbie, I think just general public awareness of the importance of forest. As so much of our population now is urbanized, and just a lot of young people don't get outdoors at all, and so just the general population understanding of forest. And I think that's the reason the shared stewardship agreements that we're working on with the states and elevating the value of forest to a governor's level and getting some play on that. It may make just a minor micro difference, but micro differences can go a long way when you're at a higher political plane. But there's lots of challenges beyond that, with forest health, with invasive insects and disease, with the ability to do management and to manage smoke with increasing populations and the need to do fire, prescribed fire. So there's a number of challenges, but I think the central one is the acceptance and the awareness of the importance of forest and forest conservation.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
So, you mentioned building partnerships, and things have changed a lot over the last 40 years in terms of diversity of the partners that we in the Forest Service deal with, and how you see the agency, how has that responded to that diversity? And do you feel that it's easier to make those partnerships now, or more difficult?
Well, I've worked for the Forest Service 18 years, and I don't think it's any more difficult for me, and I think each has a different view of that. there are a lot more partners that have an interest in the Forest Service, I think, than in the past. And certainly it's important for us to reach out and do all that we can to work with those partners. So maybe it's more difficult in the sense that there's more partners out there to work with, but I don't see that much difference myself. Do you have an opinion on that?
No,
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of diversity, in terms of the types of partners, but also the diversity of people.
Yeah.
Um,
Certainly our population is more diverse than it was several decades ago. And certainly the interest groups that are interested in conservation are more diverse. So it takes effort on our part, but I think we make that effort. Certainly. Thanks. Yes, sir.
To follow that question, what kind of strategy you're going to have to build a globally scale to make a relationship?
Say that again, I'm not sure.
I said, you mentioned there's a strategy to make a partnership with in the nationwide or different partnership. How about the global side? You say
Global
that-
partnerships.
Global partners? Well, that's not we have an international forestry branch, and I don't deal outside the region of 13 states much. I do across the country. As it relates to global, certainly our international forestry branch brings other representatives from other countries to the Southeast. Oftentimes I'm a part of those discussions. More recently, I was on a tour with a group from Europe that's interested in wood pellets as a source of energy in Europe. And they wanted to see what we're doing in the Southeast relative to forest sustainability. Forest Inventory and Analysis Program was one of the things that we really talked a lot about. So in that context, there was discussions about what we're growing here and where it's going in interest of those folks that are buying that resource, wanting to know that there's some level of sustainability for the resource. But we have a very active international forestry program that works all over the world, and as well as the research branch to some degree partners with them. Yes, sir.
I'm an undergrad, so when you were in my shoes, what kind of steps did you take to develop relationships and kind of further your career?
You know, I got a summer job with the Wildlife Agency in Tennessee, actually, between my junior and senior year. And as a result, I got to know a lot of folks in the Wildlife Agency. So once I graduated, I actually had a job offer before I graduated. And so we do have, I think we have about 30 intern positions in the U.S. Forest Service in our 13 states. And that's a good way, if you can get a summer job, to get to know individuals within the organization who will then help you. And I think it can help in ways, and I'll give you an example. My daughter is not in natural resources. She's got a degree in communication disorders. And she wanted to go to medical school to get a degree in audiology. And her grades were not quite good enough. And but she realized this when she was a sophomore. So I encouraged her to get a job with a doctor of audiology, which she did while she was in school. As a result, that doctor wrote a glowing letter for her, and she applied to 6 schools and was accepted at all of them. And so that's, she didn't quite have the grades of everyone else, but she had a strong reference. And that's an example of the kind of thing you can do.
Come see me in the spring about getting an internship.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah,
We'll be working at it.
yeah.
I'll add something to that. So, periods of time I worked, in internships and stuff with Forest Service, but in times I couldn't get that internship, I would volunteer. I'd go and get that experience put on my resume.
That's a good point.
Volunteer with the local local, district office and get that experience that way and build those relationships that way. And it don't have to be something that's, 40 hours a week. It can be something every now and then, 8-hour day here and there, but it helps.
Okay.
Yeah, good point. Anything else? If not, I really appreciate your attention. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. I've learned a lot about Clemson today, and look forward to coming back. Thank you much.